Hi, thank you so much. I am so happy today to have with us Larry Whiteside Jr., a very impressive CISO. Larry, tell us about yourself.
I've been in this field of cybersecurity or information security, as it used to be called, for what will be 26 years this year.
Wow.
And I've been across multiple verticals. I'm an ex-US Air Force officer. I ran security at the Pentagon for a couple of years. I've been a CISO in financial services, in healthcare and utility and energy space. I've run consulting practices. I've even worked in the vendor space for a little while. And so with that, today, I'm still a CISO, which I love this job and I'm extremely passionate about it. It's interesting because I'm not a CISO who's aspiring to be a CIO or CTO. I've said many, many times that on my gravestone it'll write, husband, father, and security guy, because security is what I'm passionate about.
Beautiful.
But the thing I'm most proud of and the thing I'm most passionate about is the not-for-profit that I co-founded.
Okay.
Colleagues of mine, International Consortium of Minority Cybersecurity Professionals. The organization is geared at increasing minority and female support in the field of cybersecurity. I speak globally on the topic of cybersecurity and risk management, and when I go around, I don't see enough people that look like me or are of a different gender.
Okay.
So with that, we recognize that there's a real problem, and so we've been very blessed and fortunate to have a lot of support from a lot of different organizations across not just the cybersecurity industry, but across the private sector as a whole. We've got a number of different Fortune 500 companies who are supporting us and contributing towards the cause. We've given away hundreds of thousands of dollars in scholarships and training and a lot of different things through partnerships that we've been able to give. So it's been an amazing, amazing journey.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's great. The business case for diversity is well documented. So it's so glad, so wonderful to hear that that's something that you and your colleagues are working on. I'm also glad to hear you mentioned that you worked across several verticals. I often talk to candidates who talk about interviewing in one industry different from their background, but they have those transferable skills. But sometimes it's hard to get leadership to understand that those skills do transfer from one industry to another. So I'm glad to hear you mention that. What an impressive background. So we have the right expert in the house today to hear your take on a business. If they're interested in evaluating, or if they're looking at their cybersecurity posture and they're saying, we want to be more resilient, we need to make sure we have things in order in terms of our cybersecurity posture. If you could make one recommendation, what would you tell them?
Honestly, what I call the biggest bang for the buck, right? So in cybersecurity, you're constantly making investments. Your number one investment is your people.
Right.
Investment. And it's not necessarily just staff. Staff is a part of it, but it's actually the people in your business, the people in your company. Educating them and doing what and saying what I like to say, practice, practice, practice.
Okay.
When we say educate, it's help them understand that cybersecurity is not just a job for the cybersecurity team. It's a team that everyone who has access to systems and or data has a responsibility to. And so I call everyone in every company I've ever worked for a cybersecurity steward. And I help them understand what that means for them as an individual to be a cybersecurity steward. And the training that we have here, we do cybersecurity awareness training, but we also do onboarding cybersecurity class. In that class, the last statement we make is, my guys tell them, you are our best firewall.
Right.
At the end of the day, employees are the ones who are going to identify a large number of the threats. Yes, you're going to have some back-end technical threats, but if you think about things like misconfigurations, if you think about things like patches or lack thereof, if you think about phishing, those are probably the three top ways that organizations get exploited or breached are all things that can be fixed if you have people who are aware and accountable, right? So the IT guys who are responsible for patching and configuration management, if they understand and know what the configuration should look like from a security standpoint, that means they've been educated on it. That means they'll be aware when they're configuring the systems. The IT team or development team or whoever that's responsible for patching and building applications, if they understand what patches should be applied, what the latest patches are, and the importance of applying them in a certain time frame based on criticality, then you've educated them. Your general user who's getting, 10, 20, hundreds of emails a day, if they understand what to look for in an email to identify whether it's phishing or whether it's real, then you've educated them. And what you've done is you immediately reduce your attack vector just through education.
Beautiful. Your passion definitely comes through. Thanks for sharing that.
No problem.
So the people, and that's what I'm hearing over and over, it's the people that are critical in that resilience equation. Okay, so the next question, that professional that's in the industry, maybe they don't have 20 years, maybe they're at the 5-year mark, and they're trying to figure out what's the best thing to do to advance their career. What do you recommend?
I tell everybody who's in this field of cybersecurity, so it's a combination of things. So one, know your job and what you do well.
Okay.
But number two, it is know your business. Cybersecurity has become less of a technical field and more of a business field, right?
Okay.
Meaning, organizations are looking at cybersecurity programs as a business enabler to allow them to do the things that they want to do as it relates to innovation and other things. So even though you may be in a deeply technical role, you might be a security analyst. And a lot of people say, well, why would a security analyst need to understand the business? Well, a security analyst needs to understand the business because that then directly impacts what it is that they're trying to look for based on the threats and attacks to the specific type of business, right?
That makes a lot of sense.
You're in healthcare, right? Then you know that there are certain types of attacks that are more vulnerable. You know that there are certain systems inside your organization that are more vulnerable. You know that there's certain types of data in your organization that's more vulnerable. So you can, as a security analyst, understand the business, know where the applications live. No, it's not understanding EBITDA. It's not understanding profit and loss, right? So when people say know the business, they're not necessarily talking about that aspect of the business, not for the technical people. But when you say know the business, that means in general terms, understand the things that are important to the organization for which you work, and understand how to make that applicable directly to your job.
Okay.
So to add to that, so people then say, well, how does that then work for me if I'm looking for a new job? If you can then articulate and demonstrate
that's right.
you had that knowledge in the company that you worked for, the person that you're interviewing with will directly be able to extrapolate, well, they got to know their business. And it wasn't just about them crunching numbers. It wasn't just about them crunching data. They understood the business and were able to correlate those two together to be more valuable.
Exactly. That's beautiful. And to take it a step further, if you can articulate that from the organization that you're currently with, and then perhaps articulate how you would bring that business sense forward with the organization that you're interviewing with.
That's exactly right. And even, business acumen actually is part of advancement, career advancement.
Yes.
The more you know, right? So I sit on an executive panel at our orientation. So every month we have an orientation for new hires. The new hire orientation, and that Friday of the week, it's a full week long, and that Friday we have an executive panel. and I sit in that executive panel, one of the questions inevitably every week is about how can I advance here, right?
Okay.
What are the things that I could do, right, to be, and I tell people, don't stay in your bubble, right? A lot of people, especially when they're new to the job, they focus so heavily for the first year or two or more sometimes on their job. And not saying that their job is not important. You got hired because you got skill in the
Right.
role that you're going into. That's important. But getting outside the bubble of your job and or your department and understanding everything else that goes on in the company and then being able to identify how that directly relates to it makes you even more valuable as an employee.
Exactly. I
And
couldn't agree
so
more. That
people
sort of holistic view.
exactly. So
Mhm.
people who get outside the bubble, right, and begin to understand all of that become more valuable, and that's what elevates them inside even the company that they're in.
Exactly. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Larry, for sharing that. I think that that's some very valuable information. I think that a lot of people will be able to take advantage of that and hopefully utilize it in their business and in their career. If somebody needs to get in contact with you, how should they reach you?
Reach out on LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn. In our world today, one of the things with our industry being the size that it is, I say it's 60% who you know and 40% what you know.
Okay.
I am a very, very heavy networker. I talk with a lot of people on LinkedIn on a regular basis. And anytime I get a chance to have a conversation or pick somebody's brain, I'm doing it. So, and I'm open to the same thing. If you read my LinkedIn profile summary, I'm about helping people. It's just in my nature. That's who I am, and that's
Yes,
what I'm about. So,
beautiful. Yes, and you definitely made that clear with the work that you do with your nonprofit organization. Larry, thank you so much for joining us. Happy National Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
thank you.
That's
I
a
appreciate it.
mouthful, but we do need to raise awareness.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate you reaching out. I'm happy to help as much as I can.
Thank you, Larry.